Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Fronteras at Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. On this program, we learn more about issues facing ranchers in New Mexico. Joining us for the show is Loren Patterson, president of the New Mexico Cattle Growers Association. Later, we will hear from president-elect of the organization, Bronson Corn. Loren, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
You bet. Thank you, Anthony, for having us.
I'd like to give you a chance to share with our audience about your organization and the mission.
So New Mexico Cattle Growers Association, it was established in 1914. Ranchers came together knowing that they needed a collective voice, right? In state government, we were establishing our livestock laws, and the federal government was making the grazing allotments and things like that. Cattle growers came together as a group of those ranchers needing that representation and that collective voice. And so we've been here the whole time since 1914, and our very first meeting as an association was in regards to Gila grazing, and probably our last meeting will be over Gila grazing. So, we hope to be here for a long time, but just as long as cattle grazing has been in New Mexico. So.
Well, there's so many challenges facing ranchers
Absolutely.
in New Mexico, and I'm looking forward to learning more about that with you. But first, I want to start off and talk about wildfires that are happening in the state that have impacted our state already this year. Can you share with us how ranchers have been impacted?
Well, obviously there's the immediate impact of losing your forage in a matter of hours, right? Not knowing where your animals are, the safety of those animals, and just, that's everything we do is revolves around those animals. And so, that's the first and foremost impact. The second, what happens after that, and maybe the fire's out, hopefully, is the infrastructure that burned up. And some of those infrastructure projects have been generations in the making. And so, that's, those are the impacts you can't really put a dollar value on. They've been, something your grandfather built or something your great-grandfather built. And, it's thousands and thousands of dollars and thousands of man-hours to put that stuff up. And so that'll be in the months to come. But this is a historic situation. This is, the Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon fire has grown to be the largest in state history, and there's no stopping it yet. And so we'll see how far it goes, but let's hope the weather changes and firefighters get the chance to put it out quickly.
I mean, you mentioned the pain and the loss that ranchers endured with these things, losing a livelihood and a legacy with
Right.
their ranching. What sort of things do you share with ranchers and folks in the industry who are impacted by these wildfires about how they can get assistance?
Well, obviously, the first and very foremost thing is the safety of the animals. If we need to organize a way to get those animals into a safe place, we do that. We've found places for cattle in old dairies or wherever to get them in the safety. Fairgrounds are, we have one of those in every county, and most in northern New Mexico are full right now of horses or cattle.
Now, we saw in Lincoln County the fires impacted
Yes.
a lot of folks, and communication may be so key for folks to understand where to take that livestock. How important is it for you to stay updated with officials who are manning these wildfires and ranchers and folks living in the area with livestock?
Very much so. We have a great regulatory agency in the livestock industry under the New Mexico Livestock Board, and there is a group of inspectors scattered across the state. They're there every single day. They check for ownership and health, and in times like this, they are just the bedrock in which we build our industry around. They're donating hours and hours of their time. They're getting they're telling us where that assistance needs to be and when, and they also make sure nobody gets in harm's way, and that's so important.
Now, New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham has asked for additional support from the federal government with this disaster declaration that President Biden has signed off on and that she has asked for. What are your thoughts on what the federal government can do to help out farmers and ranchers in this situation now, but also in the future to help avoid them from being so devastating with the wildfires?
Well, we have on the federal side through the Farm Bill, we have the Farm Service Agency, and they have these relief programs in place during drought, during times of disaster. And it's scattered, the disasters can be hurricanes in the southeast, or it can be flooding in the Mississippi Delta. But here it's usually drought. And so those programs are there. The problem with those programs, sometimes it's slow getting all the paperwork filed and the payments rolling. And so we're trying to bridge that gap between the immediate and what's coming down the road. But that's, they're a big part of the recovery. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And I would encourage all producers to go to their local USDA service center and apply for those programs when they can, or if they can. And I know there's emergency centers set up in Las Vegas and up in that area for this situation.
What about the state government? Is there anything, in your opinion, that state officials could do to address this situation with wildfires and,
Well, everything they can do to streamline the gap is going to be so beneficial. I think we're going to have to really look at how forests are managed within the state. I mean, and I don't know if that's a little bit more of local input or how you do that. We'll let legislators decide that. But, I do think, we as an industry during the Dust Bowl days, we changed the way we did things. We left cover crops, we did that kind of thing. And I think, the Forest Service is maybe getting a big dose of reality right now in that they're going to have to decide how forest management is going to be in the future. And I think local input is going to be part of that.
Okay, now another issue that your organization has been vocal about has been with the recovery plan of the Mexican gray wolf.
Absolutely.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on this plan. I know the U.S. Fish and Wildlife recently announced that they've released a plan that is going to remove the population limit of the wolves. This is released a revision for the plan. And so your thoughts on this plan that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife have recently released?
So, the wolf issue is a huge issue for our industry, specifically for our producers in the Gila region. The problem has been the goalposts have continued to move over the first 5 years, the next 5 years, and it's gone this way the whole time of the program. The program seems to be very expensive. It's over $20,000 per wolf per year. Removing the cap is obviously going to put a lot more strain on livestock wolf interactions, and they're going to be negative. And it's hard to tell you that the impact a wolf has on an operation because even their presence makes cattle nervous. Nervous cattle do not gain weight. Nervous cattle don't reproduce well. And so we're going to have to revise a pay for presence program maybe, and also the depredations caused by livestock killers are not covering the cost or the true value of that livestock. And so there's going to have to be revisions to this program. I would really love to see the population cap stay in place. And I also think that they need to revise this program. It's not being run very efficiently, and it's not covering those costs for those communities that are impacted by the wolf. And until those two things, and you get positive community interaction, the wolves are never going to recover to a satisfactory level.
Are you in favor of a recovery plan for the Mexican gray wolves?
I'm not. I think there's the state of it's not 1840 anymore. We have to move on from what it used to be back in 200 years ago. I think the state's changed. We removed those wolves for a very specific purpose so that communities could grow and tax bases could grow. We did the same thing with the grizzly. We did, it's not the only animal to not make it through Western civilization, but there are other ways that are not as costly to protect that animal. So you can save genetics indefinitely in liquid nitrogen. We do it in cattle all the time. There's other ways to do it. I think we just all need to come back to the table and revise this program.
How do you see this issue being resolved?
I don't think there will ever be a great resolution of this program unless we go back to the very beginning and start over. Like I say, if ranchers or communities that are impacted by this wolf are not in favor of it, it's not going to gain ground.
Is there anything from your organization that you think might be a solution?
I think we have to, like I say, start over, because we told them at the very beginning, 25 years ago when this program started, what the conflicts would be. Those conflicts have come to fruition, each and every one of them. And they've, it's just not satisfactory for our industry. And to be honest, we have 10 billion people to feed by the year 2050. This is going to be a bigger problem than just a few impacted ranchers.
Okay, now there's a lot of issues that are facing ranchers in New Mexico, as I mentioned earlier. We have plenty to discuss. Unfortunately, we're running out of time with you,
absolutely.
and we're going to move on to hear from Bronson Corn in just a moment. But with your leadership, with your organization, what are some things that you want folks to know that ranchers face every single day here in New Mexico?
Well, obviously, Mother Nature's fickle, and she's a hard partner to be in business with. And so all the ups and downs of drought or rain or whatever is something we deal with every day. And then secondly, 96% of the world doesn't really understand what we do, and so if you have a question about how food is raised or how food gets to the grocery store, and you think but ask a rancher. They'll help you. That's their profession. That's their livelihood. And so I feed my daughter exactly what I feed you. And that's what you need to know. It's as safe a product as I could possibly make.
Loren Patterson is president of the New Mexico Cattle Growers Association. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be right back with Bronson Corn, president-elect of the New Mexico Cattle Growers Association. Welcome back. Joining us now is president-elect of the New Mexico Cattle Growers Association, Bronson Corn. Bronson, thanks for joining us.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Now, I'd like to hear from you. You're getting ready to take over as leader of the organization. What are some things that you can share with ranchers that you want to put forward with this organization with your incoming leadership?
So I've got another year and a half before I become president of the New Mexico Cattle Growers. We have got a lot of issues that we're facing right now, everything that from legislature all the way to drought. We've got a lot of stuff that we're working on. Part of the stuff that I really want to work with is mainly trying to get some of our public to understand what all we do in agriculture, why we do what we do, and how we do what we do. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about people in agriculture, and I think it would help everybody to understand kind of what we're facing and how we're doing it. And I think that it would clear up a lot of questions with the general public.
Well, let's do that right now. What are some things that farmers and ranchers, folks you represent with the New Mexico Cattle Growers Association, what are some things that ranchers are facing in the 21st century in New Mexico?
Well, we've been in the largest drought in history. So that's something that we've had to contend with. there's been a lot of practices that have gone over in the past 100 years here in New Mexico that, as far as whenever it comes to raising production livestock, that have kind of been thrown out the window. There's a lot of stuff that we have to introduce a lot more technology into kind of what we're doing. There's a lot of things that, like water management. We've got pipelines that have had to run many, many miles to get water to the certain places to be able to properly take care of the land. New Mexico is the 5th largest state in New Mexico, right? And only 0.2% of that has groundwater on it, surface water. And so one of the main things that we in production agriculture, whenever it comes to cattle, any livestock, is you got to have water for them, right? And so pipelines are a big part of what we as ranchers and farmers do.
It's such a big issue. I mean, water in New Mexico.
Right.
I think many folks in our audience have heard the saying, whiskey is for drinking, but water is for fighting.
Right.
What are your thoughts on, what the state can do and maybe even the federal government can do to help address this issue?
Well, some of the things that can happen is, this last year we had some of these SBA loans brought out for COVID relief for farmers and ranchers. That has drastically helped some of the people in agriculture, no doubt about it. But taking apart some of these regulations where people can actually manage and maintain the property that we're trying to take care of, like right now, in order for us to put in a pipeline, you have to have an ARC clearance, an ARC survey done. And right now you're talking several months before you can even get an ARC survey done. That process needs to be revamped. The ability to be able to put in infrastructure in a timely manner it's very important. You can't properly utilize any of this land if you can't get onto it and get it done when you need to get it done, and waiting for months to be able to stick in a couple mile stretch of a pipeline that's not acceptable. We've got to get this process changed around.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how policymakers address this issue and what your organization does as it is further involved with the issue. One issue that has gained a lot of attention has been the Mexican gray wolf recovery program. Your thoughts on how you think this issue should be addressed from your organization's perspective?
So out of New Mexico and Arizona, there's 196 wolves. That's what they claim there is 196 wolves. The number's probably closer to 220, and that number is expected to grow in excess of up to 400 wolves. Right now, with the less than 200 wolves that we have, the state and the federal government are spending $4 million a year on trying to recover these wolves. That's $20,000 per wolf. The detrimental impact that these wolves are causing to the livestock industry it's horrendous. The amount of depredation that we incur is horrible. They're trying to work on getting and this comes from the Fish and Wildlife Service, that for every confirmed kill from a wolf that there's another 4.6 out there somewhere that they have not found yet. And so whenever you're having upwards of 200 cases of depredation, confirmed depredation a year in a confined area, that adds up to a lot of beef, especially in the times that we're in right now where the meat market is short, cattle numbers are down. You go to the grocery store and you're having to spend $5 at least for a package of hamburger. Well, if you take 800 to 1,000 head a year, that's a lot of beef that could go into the system that's not. This whole system needs to be revamped. I'm glad that they're talking with us and they're trying to get something done. I think part of it's going through one ear and out the other, but I'm glad that they're coming to the table and not just completely shutting us out.
What does more damage to ranchers and farmers in New Mexico? Is it the Mexican gray wolf, or is it deer or elk that may be overpopulated?
Oh man, the elk population is horrible. We have an extreme overpopulation of elk. And whenever you combine the two, the elk and the wolves, you would think that they would go after the elk a little more than what they do. And they work on the elk, but everywhere that there's elk and everywhere that there's wolves, there's livestock as well. And so we have a lot of negative impacts that are caused But as far as the detriment between wolves and elk, I'm going to have to say that it's probably on the elk side, to be honest with you. The wolves, it's a bad deal, 100%. But the elk side of things, they can't get this population under control, and they're going off of animal units per section, right? And the elk, before they go through and they do their numbers to see what the carrying capacity of an allotment is or what a ranch is, the elk have already gone through and they've already taken off what stubble height there is. And so they're cutting back the numbers of livestock that you can run on there. They're wanting 2 feet of standing forage. Well, even if there was no cattle out there, no elk out there, you're still not going to get 2 feet of standing forage simply due to the drought that we're in.
So with state regulators, what are some things that you would like to share with them that they need to consider with this issue?
So the elk population needs to be managed. It needs to be taken care of. We have got to come together. We have got to come with a solution that fits all. But
any suggestions?
We need to open up hunting more. We need to get more over-the-counter tags that ranchers are able to sell on their private property to be able to get some of these these numbers down. It's detrimental to the livestock industry just simply because they're eating all of the forage out there.
Now, obviously, there's something that everybody is dealing with right now, and that is rising fuel prices. How does that affect ranchers, and what are some things that you think need to be addressed?
So the fuel prices right now are ridiculous, and it's very disheartening seeing as how we live in New Mexico has the 2 highest oil producing counties in the United States, and why we cannot capitalize more on being able to get more production in, get some refineries done to get this fuel prices taken care of is beyond me. It's all political, and I don't understand it. But
well, if you could share with us just how does that impact a rancher in New Mexico? Just give us an example.
So I'll use myself as an example. I go through $150 worth of diesel a day in one vehicle. That's just me. That's not including the people that work with me. That's not including everybody else that's on our operation. That's $150 worth of fuel a day. And whenever the producers are having to spend more on fuel to be able to produce the food that everybody's eating, the cost of food is going to go up for everybody. It's felt by us, and it's felt by all of the general public, but the general public is going to be the ones that feel it the most. At the grocery stores right now, the general public is spending up to 8.5% more right now than what they were this time last year on just groceries. And so with the inflation going up, with fuel prices going up, there's no telling how high, you could be spending in excess up to 15% more than what you were this time last year on just groceries. And it all comes down to fuel, or not all, there's a lot of other outside stuff like fertilizer for farmers. It's nearly double of what it was this time last year.
Now, I want to talk with you about another issue. We have a little over 3 minutes left with you, but the issue of feral cattle in the Gila National Forest. Your stance from your organization, what are your thoughts on how this issue has been handled?
So it's been handled very poorly, to be honest with you. The Forest Service has created this monster over many years. Whenever they go through and they pull out these allotments, getting these cattle out in a timely manner it's hard enough to do anyways. You get up in that rugged country, going out and catching these cattle it's tough. But whenever they pull these allotments out and they turn them into wilderness area where you can't go back in there anymore to get this stuff, and they destroy the infrastructure to where even if you do get them caught, you got to trail these things 15 miles to get them to a set of pens where you can load them up. This is a monster that the Forest Service has created themselves. If they wanted to really get serious about trying to take care of the issue, they would make it to where we could get in there with some portable facilities of some sort to be able to capture this stuff and bring them out of there. But they're trying to take the easy way out, and the easy way out is just to spend money to have somebody go in there and kill a bunch of cattle out of a helicopter.
No, I mean, we're talking about the Gila wilderness. That's some rugged terrain out there. Yes. There could be some challenges, I would imagine, in bringing a trailer into that area.
There would be if they didn't destroy the infrastructure that was there whenever it was a grazing allotment. It would have sure been a lot easier. But whenever they turn these allotments into wilderness area, they go through and they destroy the infrastructure, all the corrals, all the roads, everything is destroyed. So if they were serious about trying to take care of this issue, they would bring a little more to the table than just throwing down a hammer and saying this is how we're going to do it.
Okay, now I want to ask you about New Mexico lawmakers. How do you feel the New Mexico legislature did this past legislative session and this year with addressing the needs of ranchers?
On a couple of issues, they did okay. They did some, we have some friends up there that are sympathetic to agriculture. There's a lot of them that are not, and there's a lot of them that don't understand agriculture. And that's where I think we're falling into this issue of we need to get more communication out there with what we're doing. Farmers and ranchers in the United States, we're the original environmentalists. People that are watching this may disagree, that's fine. But we are the original environmentalists because our livelihoods depend on this land, and we're not going to do anything to it that's going to affect the production of it. And so that's where we need to do a little more, we need to do a better job on educating everybody on how we're trying to take care of this land.
Okay, Bronson Corn is president-elect of the New Mexico Cattle Growers Association. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
We also want to thank Loren Patterson, president of the New Mexico Cattle Growers Association, for joining us on the program. Of course, we want to thank you for joining us as well. I'm Anthony Murnell. We'll see you next time.